Good morning, everyone. Welcome once again to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists. Maybe we're just straight up fascists at this point. And dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yeah, could be. Anyway, the weather. So I was thinking this week, because you had made a comment about when we had our previous weather discussions about probably wouldn't hit 90 again or unlikely. We've been pretty close. I don't know if we've actually hit 90 since that time, but I learned something when I hadn't really paid attention to it before. I guess is I've always heard the term "dog days of summer."
Yeah.
And I just thought, okay, yeah, that's just dog days of summer to me means hot, humid, days. But it's actually a period of time. There's actually a defined period of time for that, for which we're outside that period of time. Yet I think that I feel like we are still in the dog days of summer. It's been, in that high 80s and the humidity's been pretty high, and it's just been kind of heavy. The air just feels heavy.
The air's heavy, and I went out real early this morning. It was nice. Maybe you were out pre-dawn hours too, right?
Yeah. It's good until early morning when it's like 65, 69, whatever.
But then it gets up and it gets steamy, and the problem we've had the last few days is raining in the evenings, right? Like I got caught on the 10th hole last night, a long way from the clubhouse. I was soaked, but those things happen. But yeah, so some good summer weather still. I think that this gets to be a hard time of year for me because I really love summer. And it's like you work all year to get to these lazy, crazy days, right? And now, I mean, it's pretty close to ending. Marty's back playing football and school's about to start, and all of a sudden, it's like a marker, a dividing line, and we go from this sort of laid back, slow paced existence to running and gunning again as fast as we can. So, and we're almost there. And, once you get into that period, it's like one of the things is, the pools will stay open on the weekends in September. Right. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to hit that pool because I've been enjoying the pool. Right. I almost never hit the pool again because once Labor Day goes by, because, you just got other stuff doing, and it gets starting to get a little cooler and it's like the time to, spend 4 hours dealing with all that is gone, right? There's activity. So it's like a demarcation. And then you get into fall, and fall has its things that are great about fall. And so, you start thinking about next summer, right? But, it's almost over.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this. I was trying to sort all this out in my head because things have changed so much in the world since we were younger, when we were going to school. To me, it was like you just mentioned Labor Day. I mean, you had summer was, you'd get out of school in mid-June, for most, for K through 12, and then you'd return to school right after Labor Day. And that was pretty much, that's kind of the summer for school kids. Summer may have begun a little earlier for some others, but now you have this kind of, trend where a lot of states or cities or whatever, they start school earlier. I mean, my grandchildren started school a week ago, I guess it was. And others in Arizona, I know they started school, or which also means that they will end school earlier when it comes time to, instead of maybe mid-June, maybe late May-ish or whatever. So that, maybe there's some benefits there, depending upon where the heck you are and everything like this. But it has kind of scrambled my brain because even here, where we were so used to this school starting after Labor Day, that schedule has shifted depending upon the jurisdiction.
Right.
There was a big fight in Maryland a few years ago when Larry Hogan wanted to, move everything back. He wanted to basically mandate that they couldn't start till after Labor Day, giving Ocean City merchants and others a chance to kind of have that one last big push of vacation, and get those cash registers going before they go back to school.
Yeah, the big lobby in Virginia is King's Dominion for that because
yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
They went to the same thing. It was illegal to go to school before Labor Day, and now it's it's a week or 2 weeks before Labor Day, and here and at the I guess it's the same is true in Maryland, but it's not only starts earlier, it ends late, right? We got out of school at like June 16th, so they've basically taken one of the 3 summer months. They basically crushed it from the end, and I'm against that for a couple of reasons. One is you do a lot of important learning outside of school, right? You learn, how to walk through a forest, how to skip rocks, how to swim, how to hike, right? What is nature? What does that really mean? You're looking at these plants in a book and on a microscope and stuff. And then, summer is your opportunity to go out amongst those plants and go out to other places and explore and see your family and all that kind of stuff. And so we're throwing that away, okay, because we're on the theory that more time in school equal more learning. But if you go to schools and you look and you see, the last 2 or 3 weeks, right, once they take their state achievement tests, right, the teachers, they set up the whole year to star on that day, right, to excel on that day. Once that day goes by, they don't really have a lot of ammo left, right? So you end up watching movies and all this other stuff. And a lot of the discipline problems in schools are right at the end when the school itself is not holding people's interest anymore. So the kids get bored and they do other stuff, and then that's trouble, and it goes on your permanent record, right? And that's the kind of stuff because the school, that we decided that it's got to be so long, and it's like the longer they're in school, the less time parents have to come up with entertainment for them or whatever. So a lot of this is we're babysitting for the parents, and it's not it may help the parents that work day, but it is not helping the kids.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, we learned a lot through COVID, where they went to Zoom learning and stuff like that, which really was really detrimental to the kids, and the national test scores show that they have fallen further behind, and they're not even though they're back in the classroom, they're not making up that that learning loss at all. This has been the school calendar issue has been an issue for a long time, because seniors are usually pretty much cleared by sometime like the end of May or thereabouts, that last week of May, because graduation is normally in that first part of June, those first, and yet but the rest of the the grades are still in school technically, but there's really no learning. There's zero learning going on in that time period, and it's all really comes down to the mandated that you have to have 180 school days a year or whatever the jurisdiction their state dictates. It doesn't say you have to have all quality days or whatever, because that's 3 weeks. That's what, 15 days maybe or something like that. There could be 15 or 20 days at a school calendar, which are a complete waste of time for everybody, waste of time for the teachers. All that stuff you said.
Yeah, and here in Fairfax County, the problem is almost as bad in Montgomery. Is you're gassing up the largest school bus fleet in the world, right? So every day you go, you got to buy gas for all those buses. So you think they made in Virginia is 190. I think it's 190 in Maryland too. I think 180 is the number, maybe 175.
Well, I think Maryland is 180, and Montgomery County has 185 in theirs for 5 snow days, and that's been kind of the standard for a long time. But there's got to be a better way to work this calendar so it really actually teaches the kids from start to finish. What is the use of those last few weeks if they're just sitting around basically ticking a box off. It's just, we're here, we checked in, teachers are already checked in. We can now tell the school board, the state, so it's like, we've got another day, and then at the end we said, we've met our 180 days. Maybe they got 182 because they only took off 3 days for snow, and they don't actually cut the calendar back for the snow days. You still have to go. Doesn't matter now if you which is always one of those funny things, right? It's like, if you use more than those days, they have you go longer. But if you use fewer days, they don't usually cut the days back, right?
Give it back, right? So they should give it back.
Right. I mean, it's only fair, right? I mean, you make us go longer, or we get to go a little shorter. As long as they meet the state standard 180 days, why not? Especially at the end of the year. Once again, nothing's getting done. This is not killing anybody, right? So, and I think what you spoke to earlier about some of this learning about the hiking, the skipping stones, and all this stuff. I think there's some truth in that. I also think, at our age, we get a little wistful about, this is what we would desire. It's like today, right?
Good day to go hiking right now.
Put down your phone so I can show you how to skip a stone.
Right. That's right. So, but the more time that you're turning them over to the school to entertain, the less influence you have over them. The more the school has, the less you have. And the school's babysitting, right? They're not interested in teaching anything at that point. So that's what they get is fun time.
Well, this is what's interesting too, because you may have seen this whole battle in Montgomery County on the sex ed kind of a thing. So Montgomery County, in its infinite wisdom, decided that they were no longer going to allow parents to opt out of this sex ed program, which includes a lot of stuff. So there's gender stuff in there now, and all kinds of, because it's all got to be about inclusivity, right? And so what's happened? CARE, of all organizations, CARE.
The Muslims are going nuts about this.
Right, they are, right. CARE and their people are going absolutely crazy. There's an alignment of parents that you would never have seen before, because they're like, what's going on there? I mean, and there's CARE front and center saying there are red cities, and there are blue cities and blue states and whatever that actually have this opt out. I mean, this was for them, it was not a partisan issue, from Democrats or Republicans, because opt out is there in a lot of places. This kind of stuff is being taught, but Montgomery County decided that you have to take this course. And that's ridiculous. I mean, I'm glad that they're standing up, because maybe it'll speak a little bit to what, a little more parental involvement. I mean, with the CRT and all these other things that have come up over the last few years, I think some parents have kind of awakened a little bit, like, wait a minute, what's going on here in my school system? And yet here's another thing that's being thrown at them. It's like, oh, by the way, if you teach your kids that there's just boys and girls, guess what? The school system is going to tell you that you can identify as anything you want, and that you have to accept that now. And there's other things, and you can go ahead, and it's perfectly okay if you're 7 years old to decide that you want a gender transition and all of these things. And so, I'm glad that the parents are speaking up. I can't believe I actually have to say, praise CARE of all people after all these years, strange bedfellows. But hey, and yet Montgomery County,
here's the thing, though. They're not really strange bedfellows, right? They are parents. They're parents. We're parents, right? We have something very real in common with them. And, like society, if you think about, like, the Democrats, they have knocked down every moral fence, right? Marriage, gay marriage, sex outside of marriage, abortion, all this stuff, like all these, they just attack the rules, right? And get the rules eliminated. Okay. They've attacked the societal rule against sex with kids with vigor, right? They've just decided we're going to make this okay. Right. And you get to see, finally, we're seeing what happens when someone draws the line in the sand and means it, right? It's like, I guess you saw, Bud Light has now fired everybody who had to do anything to do with Dylan Mulvaney. Target had its first losing quarter since 2001 last quarter because of their enthusiastic embrace of Gay Pride Month and putting all these stuff in the candidates who talk about that on the campaign trail win of either party, right? There's starting to be some Democrats saying, hey, we went too far, and it's working for them too. But we have found an issue that they got no answer to. They are deeply committed to their side. We've got enough quotes on them now that they'll never really be able to walk away from it. And America doesn't want it. America is saying, no, you leave your hands off the kids. That's a bridge too far. We've finally hit a cultural lodestone that they cannot overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I just, how do you as defend this gender transition, idea for little children?
Right.
Where they have their decision-making process is nowhere near where it needs to be for anything like that. And yet,
and you can't undo it,
no.
Right? You can't go back and put breasts back on. You can't. You have to, and kids change. And what happened is, when the kids were alone because of the COVID, a lot of these ideas, sort of sounds rude to say, but got into their heads, right? But now that they're back to socialize, I mean, we know some kids in our neighborhood, they're like, I am no gender, this one kid. It's like, no, I'm a boy, It's just, it's just come back to them that, no, that's not the life they want. So, if those parents are going and locking in, a temporary feeling, then you're going to have a permanent reminder for the rest of your life. I mean, it's short-sighted in the extreme, and society is rightfully revulsing at this.
Yeah, no, I'm hopeful for some of the things. I mean, yes, that the parents are not strange bedfellows. I guess mine was more of a political alignment of, we've got a lot of, here in Montgomery County, we have a lot of conservatives, the Moms for Liberty people are coming out and things like that. But these parents are willing to help kind of align with that at this point because they are united in this purpose. They disagree, right, vehemently with this. I mean, look, my first sex ed course was in junior high. I think it was 8th grade. Okay. And, by today's standards, it was pretty tame,
Yeah.
I remember, my youngest son, getting that in like 5th grade, for which we opted him out of that program at that point in time, for which I think he was grateful for that. But, it was like, it's like, okay, I saw in just that time period of the time that from time I was a young boy, it came around for my kids, is that, they decided that, it no longer, sex ed needed to go down to like the 10, 11-year-old level. It was no longer the puberty level. It was now almost into the prepubescent level. And it's like, what are we doing here? It's like,
and now it's other than that. You start like 2nd or 3rd grade. All this stuff.
It's
like, it's ridiculous.
And that, and that fits exactly with, with what the, what we call the gay agenda back, they had a film that was targeted right at school children and all of this stuff, and telling the kids it was okay to be gay, kind of a thing like this. And you've got 6, 7, 8-year-olds trying to figure out what the heck are they talking about.
Right.
But they're getting these lectures that are sponsored by the schools.
That's right.
On this. And so
we laugh. I guess you saw that there's a couple of states, I guess Florida is one of them, where they're going to use some of the PragerU videos. The leftists are going nuts. But I mean, he's on educational topics. His view is as valid as the others, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, when you start switching from the liberal theology kind of thing like that's been taught and shoved down the throats of the kids, and then someone like Florida decides that we're going to take a different tack, we're going to give it a little more conservative viewpoint and do that. Liberals and teachers unions will go absolutely nuts about that.
It's horrible. It's misinformation. It's like some of that other is misinformation too, buddy.
What have they been doing for the past 30, 40, 50 years?
Right.
I mean, it's like there's been disinformation on their part, but when it fits their agenda, they're fine. As soon as it throws a spike or something into their agenda. It's like, oh no, 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 you can't do that at all.
That's right.
You know? So anyway, just kind of quickly, this whole, the terrible tragedy of the the wildfires that hit Maui. Of course, there's climate change has creeped into that discussion as well. What say you?
Well, here's the interesting thing about that. I mean, you know who Gavin Schmidt is, right?
Yep.
He's one of the leading climate alarmist guys, scientist. I guess he's teaching at Penn or one of those now. And he himself came out and said, linking singular events to global warming, especially wildfires. Wildfires have the lowest correlation with global warming of any of the type of disasters, like hurricanes, tornadoes, all that, far more than wildfires, right? This was apparently caused by the grass got. They had what they called a freeze drought, right? So it was fine 2 months ago. So it's hard for me to think about like how drought stricken can something become in 2 months. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical of that. But then apparently someone started this fire. They had higher than usual trade winds. There was a hurricane that passed a few hundred miles to the south that gave them more wind than they're used to dealing with. So you had a tragic fire. And of course, as you've done business in Hawaii. It's probably the least well-run state in the country, right? It's pretty much state government is pretty much just a party, and it's they were unprepared. The response has been slow and halting, and now they had part of their island burned up, so they have to respond now.
It's terrible. Of course, Karine Jean-Pierre doesn't know who these people are that are running. could misgendered Senator Mazie Hirono and
she misgendered Mazie Hirono.
Yeah, she called him. She said during a press conference she referred to her as a he. She said, and he like this is like that. Just mispronounced the governor's name. It was just she is such a disaster.
She is. I think it's a sort of I think this is sort of a thumb in the nose. Trump, he thumbed his nose at the press, right? He went up to them and said, "You're fake news" and all this kind of stuff, right? Biden doesn't do that. He just makes them deal with her. I kind of hand it to him. It's pretty funny. You're sort of, your arm's length. Hey, I'm not the one out there. But
but don't you? I mean, like if you're a Democrat, it's like, can't we do better than this? Do we have to? But the problem is, in my mind, as I've stated, gazillion times, probably is that, he appointed a black lesbian, right, to do the female, right? So so he can't easily remove her unless she leaves her on her own. I mean, right. because the people on that side will excoriate him for doing that. So right. So they throw her up. I mean, she's kind of this. She represents all these different things, but for heaven's sakes, it's kind of like, hey, but now I'm stuck with her. It's like I thought she'd be better than that.
Yeah, there's no choice now.
Yeah, they're just kind of stuck on that. Okay, so obviously the news that has sucked up a lot of the air here was Trump's latest indictment. It just seems to be this kind of rolling thing, with one after another after another. So this one is in Georgia. This time it's 18 other people that are with him, and they used Fani Willis is using RICO as the big reason for this. The whole racketeering, corruption. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. So you're trying to tell me that Trump and all these people were an organized crime, like a mob, like the mafia to do this? Right. It's like, I mean, Trump has his issues in Georgia, but it's like the idea that this is some like mafia type operation. I don't know how she gets very far with this.
Right. And she's indicted, half the Republican Party, and she wants to do something. It seems aimed at so if it's a RICO crime and some of the crime took place in other states, in theory, if he's convicted of this, those other states would be inaccessible to him too. So if Trump is convicted in Georgia and becomes president, I mean, he can't really be pardoned, right? He can't pardon himself because the state charge rather than a federal charge. So now she wants to make it where he can't pardon himself, and there's all these other states involved just because of what she did. So that's why it's structured this way, is try to create places Trump can't go all over the country. So, I was reading like Eric Erickson, he took this seriously. He gave it a write up, and it's like, he's charged this and that and the other. The more I read about this, the more I think this is by far the most ridiculous of the indictments yet. And that was a pretty good bar to have to get under, considering the one in DC, right? Yeah. So his speech at the end at the end of the election night saying, we don't know what now, but it looks like I'm going to win, right? Is part of the charge, right? It's part of how she's proving her thing. Right. At that point, he didn't even know about all these, 93-7 vote drops in the middle of the night and all this stuff. That didn't even happen yet. So, she is charging perfectly normal conduct as criminal conduct. And, I don't see how they get there. I think, most legal experts who have looked at this say it's unlikely Trump will ever be convicted or do any time over any of this. And, who are not just hardcore Trump haters. But it's just another thing to drag him down and so forth, and to make it harder for him to run, which was their whole intent.
Yeah. So this I don't know. I mean, it just seems that how much more of this can do. I mean,
and add to the clown car of scene of all this, right? Monday night. She posts that, it's got a case number and a judge assigned to it, right? And the grand jury hadn't even voted. So it's like she had her ham sandwich made before the grand jury even voted. Did you know that?
I did hear one of these legal scholar guys, saying that. I mean, it was perplexing to a lot of people as to exactly what happened there. Though one just thought, says that it's possible that. That the charges that were being made, a lot of these things were not like loaded into their normal state system, and that they were kind of running this test.
They're combining laws and they're playing.
Yeah, they were kind of running a test, and then but somehow it got exposed at the wrong time. Anyway, but it doesn't make her look good anyway, right? It doesn't make her look good. It's like they had this thing out there and people were reporting it happened before it happened. And when did she do this? Did she hold a press conference at like 11:30 at night or something like that? I mean, that in and of itself
doesn't look professional at all. It looks like gangland, junta gonna junta type of justice.
Yeah, that was just extremely bizarre.
Yeah, it's all coordinated with the feds. I mean, they're all on the same team doing the same thing.
Yeah, and these state charges. I mean, this is not something like if a Republican got elected president that they could do anything about state charges. They can take care of, they can pardon on federal charges, but not on state charges. So, but once again, how long will it take for this stuff to get to trial and roll through the whole process? There's so many things that are going to be potentially clogging, the calendar for Trump, depending upon what the judges are on each of these cases are trying to do.
She wants to do all these trials, try them all together by the end of the year.
Yeah.
What?
Not going to happen.
We'll be lucky if this sees a courtroom before the end of next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some pressure in a sense, political pressure. They try to want to get it done that way. They definitely want it definitely to inflict maximum damage on Trump and to wound him, during the presidential campaign. But they're still legal proceedings. You can only push these so far. I mean, there's so many things that have to be done, and the more extensive that the charges are, and the more people are involved, the longer this is going to take. I mean, 19 people involved in this thing. This is going to take forever. In essence,
many of whom are themselves lawyers.
Yeah.
Right. So they're going to they know all kinds of stuff that they can pull to drag us out. So. It won't be this year. It may not even be next year. It may not even be ever.
Yeah, I'm not. I looked at the list and I was like, okay, I'm not really crying about Sidney Powell or someone like that. Right. I've kind of soured on Rudy too, because I think Rudy should have just.
I think Rudy needs to check into one of those places for 30 days. Yeah, I do. I think Rudy's got a drinking problem, and it's causing him some other troubles, some other problems.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with Rudy, but I mean, it's like, long gone are the days of the victorious mayor. He had his political heyday, but boy, this lately it's just not been good. The reports now is that he's effectively out of cash, and that I guess he's thinking about trying to sell. He's got a $6.5 million home, looking for ways to raise money because he's got. It's not just this thing going. He's got some other things that are going on in Georgia too that I guess he's been sued that he's got to deal with, and legal bills can get very expensive very fast. We've seen reports, on Trump's legal bills and how they're being handled at this point in time. So this is the lawyers are going to make a lot of money if they get paid off of this stuff.
Well, Trump's lawyers will get paid.
Yeah.
But the leftists give him a lot of things, but trouble over that. But the thing Trump's campaign needs right now is good lawyers, right, to deal with this. I mean, that is their priority.
Yeah,
I don't blame them for that.
So then Hillary gets interviewed, and she said she felt profound sadness with one of her over these indictments. But of course, it's like, wait a minute, you're talking to Hillary. I'm like, she's not exactly clean on stuff, And,
they love to talk about how clean she is now.
Yeah.
She didn't know how many charges she got. Yeah, well, that doesn't exactly make the point you're trying to make, buddy. You know what I mean? There's a story there about why she doesn't have charges, and it's not because she didn't do anything.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, I don't know, trying to resurrect Hillary, and the thing too about Hillary and a lot of other Democrats too is just that you go back, and I don't agree with with Trump's and his machinations on a lot of election stuff, but there's plenty of video out there for Democrats talking about how Trump wasn't a legitimate president, right?
Oh yeah. So like I had one the other day. It was like 27 minutes of Democrats. Trump wasn't a legitimate president.
It's a good reminder of what they were saying in 2016, versus what Trump has been saying about 2020. It's like, so the Democrats aren't clean on this issue. This is in terms of complaining about Trump and what he said about stolen election and stuff like that, and illegitimate president, and Hillary, and just there's complete ignorance about all of Hillary's chicanery, and that it's like kind of like this whole thing that Hillary was right. She's the spokesperson for all of this because she ran against Donald Trump. She should be the person we should go to for an opinion about all of this stuff on Donald Trump. I think it is sad in the sense of what a great distraction this is. It takes away a lot of time and money from real issues of the day when everybody is talking about all of this stuff, a lot of which is a bunch of nonsense to begin with. And so, we're gonna spend a lot of time and money, wasting our time and money on a lot of stuff that Trump has been charged with. But it's not like Joe Biden doesn't have his own problems either. I mean, it's the Hunter Biden thing is just, it's going to be a bigger problem than the Joe and the Democrats wanted to be here. I thought it was kind of funny though, because Garland appoints Weiss as the special counsel, and Weiss, I kind of swear, I think Weiss said that he didn't ask for that, but Garland said he did.
There's a lot of like Weiss says something and they say, oh, he didn't say that, and there's a lot of like that kind of stuff going on where they think they're on the same page, but they're really not. There's some interesting things about that. The special counsel thing, it's unclear, for instance, what I guess Weiss is claiming that the claim is that the additional power he gets as a result of being special counsel is that he can file charges in states other than Delaware. Right. And they're saying that you could tee up some of these cases in California, where Hunter was living, and in DC. So, he has still got some stuff he wants to charge. Now, if you still have stuff you want to charge, why did you sign up on this deal that basically let him go for all the charges, right? It was, 2 minor tax things, misdemeanor, credit for paying some of the taxes back, and a gun charge that would go away if you could complete a diversion program, which involves passing a drug test, which might have been harder than they think. So it's the same guy, and he can now, launch these charges other places if he comes up with them. But I think what the judge has told them, and not perhaps in so many words, is that he's going to have to do some time. That the other people who have been convicted in recent years of tax crimes comparable to his have gone to jail. Some of them 8, 9, 10 years. So these are, it was a little more serious level of charges than we were led to believe. And the tax charges are not yet threatened by the statute of limitations. So, part of what Weiss did was let the statute of limitations run out on a lot of what they might have charged Hunter Biden with, which he's, whatever else he does for them, he has cleared that. But, Hunter Biden's still in a lot of trouble. And there are an increasing amount of people out there who have the incentive now to roll on the Bidens, right? They're about to get in trouble. And it's like, rather than me, I'm going to just tell my little story and see what happens. And Hunter is becoming one of those. So I was assured yesterday by a good conservative that there's no way Hunter would flip on his dad, but I'm not sure that's possible. It is a pretty transactional group of people here, right? So, I think I think this judge has said, whatever you guys come up with for a plea deal, and the plea deal is now dead, right? So they have to start from scratch. It's going to have to include some jail time. And I'm not sure that Hunter is ready to accept that. He may have the last word on that.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of funny because I think I asked you last week about, where we're going with this Hunter plea deal. And now Weiss is like, it's dead. Right.
Yeah. And Hunter, well, we had the part where you wouldn't, we didn't have nothing. We got nothing. We're starting from scratch. So, I think Weiss got burned by, he was a little too friendly to the house, so to speak. And I think he now has to distance himself some from that.
Yeah, I think so. And this could wind up being problematic for Joe. Once again, we've talked about this before. Joe is not the most popular guy among Democrats. He's not. They would prefer to have someone else, but they don't really have anybody that would probably run a good race at this point.
Here's the thing, there's a bunch of people who think they would be perfect for this, right? Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg, 3 or 4 others that you could probably think of if you take a second. If Joe is knocked out of running, all those people are suddenly, have a chance, right? So the idea that he would have no problem in the Senate, I don't know about that. The other thing is, I don't know if you caught this, but Representative Raskin from up in your part of the world said yesterday or Monday, maybe, that hardcore, very partisan, sharp-edged Democrat said, Hunter appears to have done some scummy stuff here, and Joe doesn't look perfect either. And so whatever needs to happen to Hunter needs to happen. So in other words, the Democrats, not us, but the Democrats who are looking at this are like, okay, it's time for Hunter to head for the wood chipper to save Joe, right? So again, that requires Hunter's cooperation, and that is, I am not confident is forthcoming.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that they were trying to do this whole plea deal and then sweep everything under the rug already shows kind of an indication that Hunter's cooperation was going to be limited at best. But yeah, I mean, if Hunter wants to save his dad, he's got to take one for the team, take it for the family, and face the music and do this. And I think Democrats, just like Raskin, it's hard to believe someone who is as hard left as he is basically saying this, but the realization is there. This is where the Democrats, even if you don't like them, you can say, all right, at least they're trying to be honest about the situation. They have now looked at this and they assess
Well,
this, and they're like,
they've
okay,
moved the line back to one they
yeah,
can.
they're finally like, okay, we're gonna pull back the curtain a little bit here. We're gonna admit that, Hunter's been a problem. We've never been comfortable with Hunter and all the stories that have come out about him. But now he's got a special counsel, and we've got a presidential race coming up, and his dad's there. And we can't have this thing dragging out for 6 to 8 months because this will kill him for sure. And so Hunter needs to do whatever it is, come clean and just admit it. And if this means federal prison time or whatever it is, take it. Go do it. Get it out of the way as soon as they can.
Yeah.
They cannot have this. I mean, Joe and Jill can say all they want about that they support him and love him and things like that. That's fine. As parents, you can do that. But at the other point in time, it's like, I mean, Joe's got to kind of tell Hunter too. He says, like, look, it's like, you're going to sink me. You're going to sink the party.
Right. And he may say, well, I'm tired of giving you half my money and the way you treated me and put me in this position. And, if I'm going, I'm not going alone.
Yeah. And look, and Hunter has embarrassed Joe Biden for a long time. This is a time period. It was like, you just have to kind of cut it loose and say, you go your way, I'm going my way. And, the political ties have got to be severed so that I can go on and try to win another election here, which is going to be dicey for him.
Yeah, it's getting more dicey by the day. And, I think what the Democrats are really sort of decided is the way out of this is to, if there's a way they can get Joe out of the race without him being impeached, right? Just let me finish my term. I won't try to do any more, and lay off me about this other stuff, and we'll just, this will be the end of Joe. I ride off into the sunset. Me and Corn Pop, we're on the beach forever, right? But I mean, I don't know if they're, will prosecutor, I imagine this prosecutor would probably go for that. Will the country go for that? If there are, 91 indictments against Trump, they want to go through piece by piece. So we're going to say, hey, we'll let Biden walk out of all this bribery scheme stuff because, if he promises not to run again, will they say, okay, Trump, if you promise not to run again, we make all this go away for everybody. And we'll just get us 2 new candidates and start from scratch. I don't know. I mean, I would not support Trump doing that. I don't think the Democrats should be able to indict our candidate out of the race, right? And so even if that means Trump goes to trial, and even if that means that one or two of these trials don't go his way, I suspect the only one that he could seriously get ensnared in is the Florida documents case. I think the rest of it's nonsense, easily dismissed nonsense. And that's the kind of thing that they say, okay, if you give the documents back and we have what we need, we don't really care anymore. And, 5 minutes in jail or whatever. Right. So, that's the kind of thing you would be looking for. You're not, they're not, if you give Trump that kind of deal, I don't know. Right. But I mean, that's all they're going to end up with. And it's worth him to fight it all out. And, he gets to be president, he can take care of the federal counts, and, they can make life very hard on the states of Georgia and New York if they choose not to follow suit.
Yeah, and I do think, I mean, I think there's some fatigue, with all of these indictments that people are just kind of getting tired of all of this stuff.
And see the Post this morning, the editor Ruth Marcus had a piece in the Post this morning saying that the Fani Willis indictment is probably one too many.
Is that right? Well, see, I mean, that's in the Washington Post, Ruth Marcus, my goodness,
Yeah.
So it's almost, it is kind of, the thing of, they've gotten to be overzealous. They think they can just do this, and this is the best way to kind of knock Trump down and out. But Trump has already, he's shown, with all these indictments up to this point in time, that, he's used that against him, and pretty effectively. To play the victim card, and it's working in his favor. What he leads his challengers by wide margins. And this has not had the effect of knocking him out. So there are some Democrats that want to knock Trump out. I think there's some Democrats that actually want to see a Biden-Trump rematch because they think that there's no way that Trump can win anyway. So it's why not let electoral politics go the way they should? You've mucked up the process with all this legal stuff that probably will not go very far at all. And then once again, goes back to my wasting a lot of time and money on things like this to make headlines and make a name for yourself, et cetera, right? Because I mean, realistically, I mean, how many people had paid much attention to Fonnie Willis or Alvin Bragg or any of these other people before this? Only when they try to go for the headlines, right? But their normal course of work doesn't really, require nationwide headlines and get on CNN and everybody everywhere else. So
you realize Soros was paid about a third of Bragg's campaign expenses.
Yeah. So we know where we follow the money too on that as well. But the thing about Joe too is that the video from his trip, his speech, was just like, once again, if I'm a Democrat, I'm embarrassed that this guy is out there and he's he's going to be the nominee for 2024, that he wants to be president again after stumbling through a speech, including, I mean, there was that one point where there's one thing he said something, I mean, and he mumbled it. So it's like, it was totally indistinguishable exactly what the heck he was saying. I watched that little clip several times. It's like, I have no idea what the heck, what he was trying to say there. He brings up the bridge collapse in Pittsburgh. He's got a real problem. He's like, I watched that thing collapse, kind of before my eyes. It's like, no, actually you were there. You were in town because of the Infrastructure Act, but you actually didn't visit the area until hours after the bridge had collapsed.
Yeah.
So you did not actually see the collapse.
Right.
Joe's got he's got a problem with this.
The problem with just telling easily checked out lies. I was top in my class. You were 87th out of 95. You don't think people are keeping records of that? I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college. No, there were 3 others. Easily checked. I mean, it's like, why would you do that? But I mean, the guy's he's a prolific liar, and he's always been, he had to drop out of one campaign for lying and one for plagiarism, right? His previous presidential campaigns. So, and the Democrats are in real trouble, because if something does happen to Joe, then it is back to the square one, because, the normal progression of events would be for the vice president to move into the front chair or whatever. But that's, even if Joe is drummed out of office before his term ends, which is not impossible. It's not likely, but it's not impossible. No one's going to want 4 years of Kamala, right? Not the Democrats even could not let that happen, right? They're going to see all those other Democrats are going to get in the race and try to stop that. And while Joe versus Trump will be a close race, these other people versus Trump will not be.
Yeah, and you've got, I mean, I think you've mentioned Gavin Newsom in the past as another potential, out there. I've noticed, I don't know what mailing list I'm on, but I'm on some. I'm now getting more frequent Gavin Newsom emails,
right,
than ever before. I mean, it's coming out. I mean, I think they're coming out once a week. He's talking about something or other. Sometimes about boasting about something he may have done in California, but others just general Democrat themes. But this seems to be a fairly recent phenomenon over the last month and a half, where it's picked up, and I'm like, okay, so what's going on here with Gavin, where we're now getting Gavin on this Democrat email coming out here? Is that, is this a trial balloon floating to see what kind of money reaction they get if, when they put out that email? Do people donate in droves, and that his message is resonating? Above all.
What of his message? The other thing to me that occurs to me about this is, like, he's testing some pretty widely diverse topics, right? So, the last one was they want to do some kind of constitutional amendment to abridge the Second Amendment. You got to hit 38 states for that. I think me and you could sit here right now and come up with 13 who will not pass it in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Right. So it won't happen. Right. But he's on that. He's on global warming. He's on the economy. He says he has a solution for homelessness. I know where you can give that one a shot, buddy. I got a good idea for you there. But I think that he is remarkably easy to campaign against. I don't think anybody outside of California takes him seriously.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the Democrats, 2024, there's a lot of question marks for them, going forward. I mean, the unfortunate part, in a sense, though, is just that, Ron DeSantis, at least on paper, who looks so strong, seems to be, has lost a lot of steam. I mean, this Emerson poll out of New Hampshire, it's basically a tie now with Christie, but I mean, they have Christie 1 point ahead of DeSantis. That's not good for DeSantis. I mean, it's hard to look at that and find any real good news in that, but in that type of a thing, that it just seems to be that the campaign looks like it's still flailing, along there. My thing is that these guys talk about issues that are important on a national basis. Don't get so localized. He's been great for Florida, but that does not necessarily something that people in other 49 states want to hear, and it's hard to always translate that. I mean, this was what to me also makes now you kind of wonders, like, is Glenn Youngkin a dark horse out there for something in some capacity in the future, because the other candidates aren't really making that big of a mark at this point in time against Trump? Or is this just all about Trump now, and Iowa State Fair. I mean, people are trying to get some traction, and Trump keeps sucking all the oxygen out of the room for them.
If so, I think it's Trump's until he gives it up, right? I think it's hard for him to penetrate him. I'm astonished at how poorly DeSantis has done. I'm like you. I looked at him as a strong candidate. He had some interesting stuff to say. He had really attacked some policy shibboleths that conservatives are stark raving mad about, like, colleges, leftist swing of colleges, wokeism and so-called family entertainment, trying to sneak in that pedo message in family entertainment. He's really like gone out and tackled things that are important. And if you talk to the people who run these focus groups, and like we were talking about earlier about, the pedo / gay agenda, and it's not all gays are pedos, right? Some of them, but there is a coalition of the two there pushing for the stuff, and pushing for it to be in schools and so forth. And if you look at like polling focus group results, those are very popular, potent, powerful issues for Republicans. They change moderate voters to Republican voters. They're very persuasive issues. And that's what he focused on. What he tried to launch on Twitter. His people skills aren't that great. One of the things that, the services that Iowa and New Hampshire do for Americans is, and the reason Christie is caught up with him in New Hampshire is Christie has spent almost all his time in New Hampshire, and DeSantis has spent almost all his time in Iowa. So Christie is working New Hampshire, and DeSantis is not. DeSantis is working Iowa. So, and Christie is a one-note band, right? He's just bashing Trump. He's really got nothing else. He really doesn't talk about anything else. I say that. It could be that's just the way the news is getting presented to us, but if you look at like Twitter every day, Christie blasts Trump, and it'll be like, he was so very democracy, or some whatever pablum quote he gives that day. But DeSantis he hasn't performed. He just has not been able to get people interested in him and his story and his campaign. And I don't know if it's personnel. I don't know. And the other thing is, what this tells you is, okay, I think most people can see now that it's probably going to be Trump in 24, but, it raises a big question about 28, because, the assumption was, Trump in 24, DeSantis in 28, and we're all going to get behind that. Well, I'm not sure we all get behind that now. I think that, I think the longer that he stays in the race doing poorly, doing really far below expectations poorly, the more he hurts his chances of doing this in the future.
Yeah, I mean, the people will look at his performance here on a national stage, and they will judge him for that in terms of his viability for the fuhad on a national level. So
yeah. I mean, you can make comebacks. John Kerry, he had two awful campaigns. Biden had two awful campaigns and then won, right? So I mean, it can be done. Hillary Clinton, how many times did she flame out before she was finally the nominee? But it's a lot harder once you've established that A, you're a loser, and B, you have trouble managing your campaign. He's had 4 facelifts, and opened on Twitter. That was a disaster, and so I mean, he did not manage. You say, okay, what's the job of president? It's managing big projects, right? And here was a big project that he has so far not managed well at all.
Right. All right. Well, we've reached the end as usual, and so give you about a minute and a half or thereabouts to kind of wrap things up, Brian.
I'm waiting on my thing to click. Oh, knows. What would we have left on the list? Because there was some stuff on the list. I'm hurrying. I'm burning my minute and a half. I still need my minute and a half. There was a couple of things on here. So here we go. All right. Yeah, Giuliani is broke. I think he's been broke a long time. Biden says the inflation is going lower. No, it's not. It's like you said earlier. It's already, gas is already back at $4 in 11 states, and many more to come. This is now we're going to the fall blend. It's supposed to go down this time of year. Gasoline traditionally falls in August, September. If it's going up, that's a big bad sign. Job growth is down. Inflation starting to creep back up. I think that, on top of Biden's mounting legal woes, he's going to have a lot of economic headwinds going into the last year. And you really can't go back to the public and say, let's spend another, they're celebrating the Inflation Reduction Act today as the 1 year since that was signed, and it's like, I think the public has become enough concerned about, the enormous federal debt and the enormous inability of Congress to do anything about it, that, another huge, Keynesian stimulus spending bill, A, won't go over, and B, its capacity to move the needle has pretty much been exhausted.
Yeah. And as I think Biden is even on the record as saying he regrets calling it that. So
right.
Brilliant move. All right, everybody. Thank you once again for joining us. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.